We're in Colorado Springs, where medical marijuana is legal. And tonight you'll meet a resident from Kansas who says he was pretty much banished to Colorado. And tonight he faces almost 25 years in prison for medical marijuana.
Put your hands in the air! Put your hands in the air! Get your hands in the air now!
I wasn't selling it to anyone.
You guys can come on in.
I didn't have a meth lab.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the hydroponics.
I wasn't producing mass amounts and selling it on the black market.
You got scales and stuff in here too.
Back in May of 2017, Wilson County Sheriff's deputies raided Larry Burgess's home. They found one pot plant.
You guys are here for this, for real? I mean, all you guys with your guns?
But this is real. Marijuana isn't medicine in Kansas. Deputies dig through the fridge and freezer. Even the spices are under suspicion. Closets are checked. They take more than 100 pictures.
Turn around, face me, with your back towards me.
Larry is cuffed and hauled to jail.
All right, take a seat in the truck there.
This is what happens next. Larry is alone in the Wilson County Sheriff's Department holding cell. Deputies are still raiding his home.
Do what?
I'm going to run to the jail. Okay. Our boy's having a seizure. They're just paging EMS out.
Larry says he had 2 seizures while in custody. How long was it before you had a seizure?
I believe it was within 2 hours of being there at the jail cell. I believe it was within the first hour, but I know it was for sure the first 2 hours of being there.
Keep watching. Someone comes to help.
They did send me by ambulance to the hospital.
Now listen to deputies at his home.
Pretty convenient he's having a seizure.
Hmm?
It's pretty convenient he's having a seizure.
He does.
He does have them.
He does have them, and I figured that this would probably kick him into one.
The stress or whatever.
Yeah.
If you think those seizures inspired some sympathy, you'd be wrong. Deputies joke about bringing Larry his marijuana.
No, hell no.
And then the prosecutor threw the book at him. Larry now faces 4 criminal counts: possession, manufacturing, distribution, and unlawful use of a communications device to commit a felony.
The maximum amount is 6 months shy of 25 years in prison. And it is a hard pill to swallow.
42 states have changed their attitudes towards marijuana. It's either legal as medical marijuana or the penalties have been greatly reduced. 11 states and the District of Columbia even allow for recreational use. You might say Larry got sick in the wrong state.
We lost our home, we lost our community, we lost our freedom in Kansas. I feel we've lost a lot through this terrible ordeal.
We caught up with Larry in Colorado Springs. A judge allowed a modified bond so Larry could live in Colorado while waiting for his trial back in Kansas. Here, medical marijuana is legal.
Hi, you guys.
Larry just heads to the store.
Just fine. How are
But
you?
criminal charges hang over his head and his entire family.
It's definitely completely, rocked our world. It's turned our lives upside down. It's not just, hey, we're going to move. It's, we got to get out of here. We have to move.
Oh, so that's an indica strain, right?
Larry has considered plea deals, but doesn't want a felony on his record, and he'd lose his medical marijuana card status. In Colorado, you can't be a felon. He points out medical marijuana is cheaper and a higher grade than recreational marijuana.
People would, say, well, just stop taking your medicine. Well, that's easier for you to say when they don't cause you to have seizures.
The idea of risking a trial in Kansas is overwhelming for him and his family.
I don't want to think about it because I just feel like if we try to figure out what we're going to do, we're going to fall apart trying to figure it out.
Larry has no criminal
I
record.
didn't have any teriyaki marinade, so I had to improvise.
He's a cancer survivor who points out pot wasn't his first choice.
23 pills a day, yeah.
Wow.
No seizure medication helped. In fact, my seizures just progressively got worse over time. It was terrible, terrible. At my lowest, I contemplated suicide.
That's when Larry drove to Colorado. He was desperate.
I can't hardly record this. This is crazy.
This was taken by Larry's wife in the middle of the night. It's tough to watch.
I can't record and try to keep you on the bed.
Larry had 2 or 3 seizures just like this every day. Now it's 2 to 3 per week, and seizures are shorter and less intense. Larry no longer walks with a cane.
The first time I tried cannabis, just waking up without having a seizure for all those years, I was an advocate from then on.
It's been, I don't even know what words to use. It's been just huge for us.
Larry and his family didn't exactly conceal what worked. They point out you can't hide things in a small town. Everyone knew Larry was very sick.
I'm able to go back to church, when you're not in church for years at a time, and then you're able to go back to church. I mean, it's just, it's not rocket science.
He also posted about it on Instagram, and all of that led to this.
Put your hands in the air!
And this.
Our boy's having a seizure. They're just paging EMS out.
And now this. So you feel like Kansas let you down?
They did. We were literally forced out of our small community.
So how does this end? We'll keep you posted on Larry's case. Reporting in Colorado Springs, Colorado, Angie Racono, KCTV5 News. The woman is a 30-year-old graduate student at KU. What happened after a night of heavy drinking depends on who you believe. The accuser says she was embarrassed and never wanted this case to head to court, but she eventually reported it to police. It's clear police and prosecutors never really believed her. They say she's not a rape victim, but a scorned woman. Someone committed a crime near this campus 1 year ago. The woman's defense team says she was taken advantage of. She was highly intoxicated and could not consent. She would slowly piece together memories due to the trauma. But police and prosecutors argue a man's reputation was trashed. They say regret is very different from rape. The woman should face consequences.
That's not something you would expect with somebody reporting such a thing.
I don't know.
At KU, reaction is mixed.
A lot of men are being falsely accused, but at the same time, it's really hard to know.
I still would be scared to come forward now because of facing unneeded prosecution.
Students were generally surprised that something like this could even happen.
I've never heard of anybody being charged with. I've heard of people not believing people who state they've been raped, but I've never heard of a false police report being charged.
You won't hear much about this case. The prosecutor has requested a gag order, which seemed odd. So our investigative unit requested all the gag order motions filed by the Douglas County Prosecutor's Office in the past 3.5 years. Turns out this is the only case prosecutors don't want you to hear about. That's right, this is the one singular case where a gag order was requested in years. That made us curious. If this is so open and shut, why hide things? So we dug into court documents and exhibits where police and prosecutors highlight the text messages the accuser sent to her friend. I up. I slept with. I know. I kind of feel terrible about it. Her friend comments on how gross the guy is and how many people he has slept with. The accuser responds, I know. Maybe I should just start an antibiotic. I know. It's gross. He's actually really good at sex, though. The woman's defense team argues she doesn't remember sending some of the messages and was highly intoxicated during others. They point to the text messages he sent that night with friends. We at Sandbar, man. LOL, we got on the road and she was so up. I was like, hell nah. His friend, LMAO, thank God, because she was really low. A different friend. She looked up, yo. You didn't even look tipsy. But the biggest issue in this case is how should a woman react if she's been raped? Can a real victim act like things are okay and even text about it? The 3 detectives decided no. And about 90 minutes into their investigation, a conversation took place. One detective testified, "We discussed it, and none of us believed this was a legitimate claim of rape." The accuser explained in court her early reactions were due to trauma, and she didn't want to believe she had been raped. But memories started surfacing. That same morning, she texted a friend, "Get here fast. I'm literally about to have a breakdown." The next day, the woman's friend called police and the pair went to the hospital. This was about 36 hours after the encounter. The woman underwent a sexual assault exam. Court documents revealed the nurse noted vaginal injuries and took photos of bruising to her arms, legs, and neck. Inside the hospital, the accuser spoke with detectives, making it clear she did not want to press charges. The woman has since explained she wanted to preserve evidence in case other accusers stepped forward. Things came to a head in January. Police obtained an arrest warrant for her. They tricked the woman into coming to the police station telling her they received, quote, "an anonymous note about her rape." They can't decipher it and need her help. Once the accuser was inside the police station, she was informed police think she's lying. They arrested her and placed her in handcuffs. She's charged with 3 counts of filing a false police report, 1 count for each time she sat down and spoke with detectives. She faces fines and jail time.
When victims are charged with filing a false police report, it can make future victims very scared to file a report.
We sat down with Victoria Pickering. She's the director of advocacy at MOXA, the Metro organization to counter sexual assault.
Survivors are listening.
She did not weigh in on this specific case, but shared her overall knowledge.
Do victims often downplay what has happened?
It can be a very natural reaction to try and minimize or downplay that because accepting the reality of what happened is very scary.
Are you concerned with how other victims will interpret this?
A high-profile case where somebody is charged with a false report, we know that future victims are going to be less likely to come forward out of fear that the same thing might happen to them.
How common is it for someone to accuse someone of rape and then to be charged with filing a false police report?
While it is less common than it was in the past, it's still more common than we would like it to be.
MOXA reports law enforcement is generally moving in the other direction because in the past, there have been high-profile disasters where accusers were charged and then later investigators discovered they were telling the truth. One rape case documented by a team of journalists won the Pulitzer Prize. The 18-year-old rape victim was branded a liar and forced to pay $500 before DNA and photos eventually proved she was telling the truth. It inspired the Netflix docudrama called Unbelievable.
I don't have a victim here. It's bogus. She made it up.
Additionally, more departments have trained officers about how people respond to trauma. Reactions can vary. Court documents reveal 2 of the officers who worked this case never had trauma training. The third took a week-long course on children. None of the officers work sex crimes as part of their daily jobs.
In the coming weeks and months, KCTV5 will continue to push for more information. Next week, we're in court fighting that gag order. The woman wants you to hear her side of things. And we invite the prosecutor to sit down and discuss the decision to charge an accuser. Angie Racono, KCTV5 News. This is Scott Welsh. He's retired U.S. Army intelligence, and he's from our area. But for 6 months, he was stationed at Karshi-Kanabad Air Base in Uzbekistan. And the soldiers there called it K2. K2 was a hub of operations for the U.S. in the fight against terrorism because it's so close to Afghanistan. But soldiers like Scott are now going public with allegations of cancer and a cover-up by the U.S. government.
You'd stomp and the dust would just fly up and get in your nose, and I mean, who knows what you're breathing.
Scott Welsh says young soldiers were focused on war.
You had a mission to do. You didn't think about it then, but now that we're back and we're all coming down with everything, you're thinking, oh, that was something to think about.
Soldiers at K2 coped with heat and freezing temperatures. Rain meant instant floods. They'd snicker and send out floats. But the warning signs were literally there.
And that was right by the PT track, right where we ran PT. You know, you'd run laps and just run right by that sign. You'd think, oh, okay, there's a sign.
There was a sign by the pond, too. Soldiers laughed and called it Skittles Pond.
Because of the colors, yeah.
Scott snapped several photos because the color was so intense. He took photos of the tent city and this picture after a giant hole appeared at the front of his 6-man tent. A pallet solved the problem.
I mean, a gigantic hole. And we're like, that's strange. So we just started using the back tent flap. And we didn't ask any questions because we just had to, you know, continue mission and go to work do what we do every day.
Scott was stationed here for 6 months when he was in his early 30s.
I thought I'd just come home and carry on life as usual. You know, you get on that plane in the middle of the night to come home and you think, okay, I'll just go home and go back to work and everything will be normal.
Scott says that didn't happen. His life changed. He's now 51 and dealing with chronic problems.
Disc degeneration, headaches, daily headaches, skin rashes all the time. Kidney stones, I get kidney stones constantly.
Scott was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2013 and had surgery. 2 other close buddies he served with have thyroid problems too. He eventually found a Facebook group of K2 veterans. Many are sick and blame K2. Thousands of members have joined the online group.
Cancer is the biggest. Cancer is huge.
10% self-report some type of cancer. 2 soldiers started this closed Facebook page. 1 is now dead.
It was eye-opening. It was pretty huge.
Scott's new mission is to track reported illnesses and deaths in a spreadsheet.
We had no protective gear whatsoever.
So far, he's learned 12 K2 soldiers have died, 10 from cancer.
We had no respirators, no anything.
Other soldiers are digging for documents. Some are classified. They claim those show K2 is clearly more than an old Army base. It was a toxic dump site for the Russians.
They buried nuclear waste, chemicals, fuels, mustard gas. It was just where they buried all their excess.
The Department of Defense acknowledges K2 has a history in this report sent to doctors. Soldiers reported a bad smell and black goo at the site. This document blames a leaking Soviet-era underground fuel distribution system. It acknowledges asbestos and low-level radioactive processed uranium in the soil and trace amounts of nerve and blister agents in some testing, but points out more recent tests are negative and claims those early tests were likely false positives. So it advises doctors to show concerned patients respect and appreciation. Thank them for that service. The conclusion is to advise veterans there is no health consequence. The protective risk control measures were effective. Reports show the U.S. government spread clean soil on top of contamination and believes that capped any toxins. Soldiers call it a literal cover-up that didn't work due to floods and strong winds.
The VA looks at it as, well, it's not a hazardous site, so we aren't going to give them benefits because the government hasn't declared it a hazardous site.
Scott and his fellow soldiers say they want the truth about K2 and say secret documents reveal the government absolutely knew of the dangers and did little to warn or protect soldiers.
The government is not releasing anything about the area because the government doesn't want to release information about the area.
Soldiers like Scott are now battling for accountability.
This group is making progress. Earlier this month, the House Oversight Committee demanded more information about K2. They point to a limited U.S. Army study which shows if you compare the soldiers at K2 to soldiers stationed in Korea, there is elevated levels of lymphatic cancer. In fact, it's about 5 times the amount. Angie Racono, KCTV5 News.
Boulevard's now iconic smokestack is as Kansas City as it gets. But it wasn't always this way. We recently sat down with the brewery's founder, John McDonald.
When I first started building the brewery, this whole area was bad, it was rough. And I think we've been a very important part of the social fabric, the fabric of Kansas City.
Seems hard to believe it's been 3 decades since a much younger McDonald personally delivered a keg to Ponak's Mexican Kitchen. That's the very first keg of beer he sold at Boulevard. McDonald says that first year was hard. The cabinet maker turned brewer ran out of cash. A bank loan saved his business just as he was trying to figure out how to save American beer.
I loved beer, but I was dissatisfied with the beer I could buy. And it was a time when really beer in America was pretty to be honest with you.
In fact, McDonald says American beer was the laughing stock of the world back then.
That's all reversed now because of craft brewers. Really, today, there isn't anybody from Germany or Belgium that wouldn't tell you that the best beer in the world is being made in America.
If timing is everything, consider when McDonald began Boulevard. In 1882, there were more than 3,000 breweries in the U.S. In 1982, that number dwindled to just 40. In 1989, Boulevard's first year, there were about 100 American breweries. Today, there are roughly 8,000 breweries in the U.S.
I don't love the competition, I have to admit, but I love the idea of it.
In 2013, McDonald's sold Boulevard to Belgian beer maker Duvel Moortgang. Beer Business Daily estimated the sale price at $100 million. And get this, he still clocks in.
I'm not day to day. They still let me come in when I want, which is great.
His kids worked in the brewing business, but both are now pursuing other interests.
That was one of the reasons I sold the brewery. My kids were of an age where I knew that I would have to stay involved for another 10 or 15 years, and then I was going to be 75 or 80 years old by the time they were ready to take over. And so, I just thought better to find a good partner and move on.
Consider what he helped to create. A brewery that's beer can now be bought in 41 states and 11 countries internationally.
It doesn't matter how big the brewery is. It matters how much you care about the beer you make.
And that, says McDonald, is his recipe for success.
You can't make people drink your beer. What you can do is make people like you and like your business. And I think that's what I'm most proud of.
Yes, he is proud of what he has built, but it was clear during our interview he is just as proud of the city he still calls home.
Kansas City's a great town, It always has been, but it's greater today than it was 30 years ago. Because there's lots of businesses like Boulevard Brewing Company that are re-energizing Kansas City, and I think you see it every day.
To say being the master brewer at Boulevard is a big job is a massive understatement. But 20 years ago, when Stephen Powles was in Kansas City interviewing for the job,
we use oats quite a bit in stouts.
He felt a little small while tasting Boulevard's lineup of beers with a brewery executive.
I said, Steve, all these beers are the same. And he got offended. He looked at me like, whoa, we're making good beer. Who are you from Belgium to tell me that our beers are all the same, right?
Two things. Powles got the job, and yes, he is from Belgium.
I remember calling my wife early in the morning, like, hey, I really like these guys. These guys are crazy. They have so much to learn. They want to do so many things. I mean, these guys ask me questions about beer, and they actually listen to me. Can you imagine? He's like, I guess I better get my bags, and we're going. 21, oh yeah, 0.3.
Powles was hired because of his passion for creating new and different beers. It was the perfect fit as Boulevard was looking to set itself apart from the competition.
I think at some point, we tried to be ahead of the curve. We tried to make beers or whatever we're doing and try to be ahead of the curve. That's really difficult to do. You try to make beers that people don't know that they want yet.
Clearly, Powell's and Boulevard succeeded in figuring out what craft beer drinkers wanted. And that success continues to blow the Belgium-born brewer away.
You know, I look at the bottle line and it's bottling 500 bottles a minute. And I'm thinking to myself, who's drinking all this? Where is this all going? And then you look at, you know, where shipments go and where all that beer goes, and you travel and you find a bottle on the shelf, or you go to Seattle and somebody's ordering one of your beers and you go like, wow, that's pretty cool.
How busy does it get here at Boulevard? Well, at any given time, they could be bottling up to 8,000 cases of beer in a single day.
How's it going, Alex?
On this day, Powell's is taste testing a test batch of a honey blonde beer due to come out in the spring.
The color needs to go down a little bit. It's a little too dark, even though it's not that bad. But it has a little bit of a bitter aftertaste that needs to go away.
It's an awesome time to be a craft beer drinker.
Natalie Gershon, Boulevard's vice president of marketing, says even with all the success and awards heaped on the brewery, Powell's continues to push the envelope.
There is still room and excitement for innovation, and they're still doing cool small test batches, and you know, it's that kind of passion that will ultimately create, you know, our next big beer. And how lucky are we to have someone guiding that ship, like Steven?
These are Citra hops.
If trying to create Boulevard's next smash seller is what drives Powell's,
They're nice and grapefruity.
he gets just as much satisfaction out of what he calls a simple truth.
It makes people happy. You know, that's the beauty that I think of the job, is that when somebody comes over and is like, you know what, you're responsible for my third kid. I'm like, you know the story. They went out, had a beer, and something happened. They weren't planning on it, right?
Unplanned romance or not, Powell's is totally in love with his job.
You make people happy. We're in the somewhat entertainment business, or, you know, putting a cheer on people's faces.
If you want to soak up some French culture, cuisine, and champagne, you don't have to fly to France. Just head to Westport.
We try to be very French and very European in that, you know, people should be eating if they're drinking and drinking if they're eating.
General Manager Sarah Hogan welcomes you to Sava, the region's only champagne bar. So, what's in the name?
It's a very common French phrase, pronounced ça va, and it is basically, what's up, how's it going, everything okay, you doing good?
Sava co-owner Jim Coley says a lot of people told him he was crazy to open a champagne bar in Kansas City. That was 6 years ago. Nobody's calling him crazy now. Turns out, Kansas Cityans love their bubbly.
We're one of the leading markets for champagne.
Here, they're focused on what they call growers' champagne.
Which sort of means that we're the farm-to-table of wine. We focus on winemakers who grow their own grapes and make their own wine from those grapes.
Many of Sava's bottles come from the region of Champagne, France, but they span the globe looking for special wines.
Beyond that, we're a neighborhood bar. You know, we're a place where people around town and around Westport can just walk in for a drink and a sandwich and friendship, conversation, some live music sometimes.
Before we taste some of their best champagne, don't overlook what you can sink your teeth into. Ed Costello is the chef de cuisine.
Tell me what we're looking at here. We got a beef tartare right here, smoked trout rillette. This is our house pommes frites with some caviar and aioli. Just a little combination meat and cheese board that we offer. Roast apple sausage.
Let's face it, this Friday Night Flights calls for some extra class, and I'm just not the right guy for the job, so I called in for some special help.
Our mystery guest is a familiar face who knows much more about champagne than I do.
Hi!
Now that Ellen is here, it's time to go to champagne school. Our first lesson, don't pop the cork.
So when opening, by the way, one of the things you try not to do is get the loud pop while it's festive. We want to get the little quiet hiss
Why is that?
That keeps more bubbles in your bottle for later.
Before we taste the Pierre Moncuit, our second lesson. Swirl the sparkling wine in your glass and get your nose into it. It enhances what you will taste with your tongue.
Okay, let's
Cheers.
Cheers. I like that.
Yep.
Ellen, what do you think?
Love it.
Next up, a sip of Pinot Noir-inspired champagne by Stefan Coquillet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that a lot.
That's very good.
Although this is Friday night flights, at Sava, they do Wednesday night flights where you can sample 3 different offerings in the middle of the week.
Our motto when we opened, and we've kept it, has been champagne for the people. We want people to come in and be able to afford to enjoy themselves here. You know, I mean, celebrations, it's great if you're celebrating a special occasion, but every day can be a celebration.
That's a great motto. Every day you should celebrate. You should celebrate every day, right? I totally agree.
Cheers to that.
Cheers
I like
to that.
I like the way you think.
Celebrate every day. Yes, absolutely.
I was kind of expecting a lot more people.
Protesters in downtown Kansas City were sparse, but people for and against the order showed up.
We all need to stay home. People are sick, people are dying, and it's not just for me, but for my family.
The Plaza area protests of the mayor and governor's stay-at-home orders drew a larger crowd.
Frankly, I think that we have a tremendous overreaction to this situation compared to the reality.
Phil Schmidt is an artist who says sketching the protest is his way of supporting the protesters' efforts.
This is an opportunity for me to do what God made me to do. So I'm here to do what I do and hopefully support this movement in my little way.
Show me freedom! Show me freedom!
From small business owners to teenagers, Monday's protest showed a divide between those against a stay-at-home order.
I feel like pushing the date back just pulls us further apart.
And those who think we should all stay home.
Healthcare workers want this just to end as soon as everyone else, but it has to be done in a timely manner. And right now is not the time.
One small business owner we talked to says it's time to let businesses boom.
I believe that every business is essential.
Melissa says her lack of business is putting pressure on her as a mother.
I haven't been able to pay my employees. I haven't been able to pay myself. I haven't been able to provide for my children. So that is, to me, that is scarier than this virus.
She says showing up today was about freedom.
I would rather live free or die. Otherwise, if I'm not free, then what's the point of living?
It started with a thud.
Every 10 minutes, a new one will hit my roof.
Our own meteorologist, Alina Lee, has noticed them dropping from 2 trees towering over her backyard, taking over her patio.
A ton of these green, funky-looking balls.
In local parks, everybody and their dog has noticed them falling along walking paths.
I see them all the time.
Yeah, they're weird. It looks like a brain.
It's like a head of lettuce. Yeah.
Gene Verna cleans them out of his yard every year.
They're a real gnarly kind of tree. They don't grow straight.
They come with a lot of different names.
Hedge balls.
I call them crab apples.
Horse apples.
We always call them hedge apples.
Ozark apples.
I don't call them anything.
Osage orange, hedge apple, bodock trees.
Dennis Patton is a horticulturist for the Johnson County Extension Office.
They're a very common native tree in our woodlands and some of our open lands around here.
And like anyone else who grew up around these, he's fascinated by them.
There's really no other local fruit that is so large.
Most of the rows here were planted by farmers as windbreakers and used as a natural fence. Their wood is so dense, it's hard to cut with a chainsaw.
That tree played an integral part in defining our pasture land.
Then there's this myth.
People put them in their garages to keep away spiders.
And that's an old wives' tale commonly heard.
This time of year, you might want to keep your head up.
You would hate to be in the backyard when they fall from the tree.
I might need a hard helmet next time I go outside.
No matter what you call them.
They're unique to our area, so we should embrace them.
4-year-old Reagan Rooster is an expert bike rider and soon-to-be big sister.
Mommy's baby.
Reagan's mom, Lauren, is feeling different the second time around.
The uncertainty. This time, I have no idea what's going to happen.
In a house already skewing female,
another girl.
Another girl?
Yep.
They're adding more pink.
Yep.
The Roosters didn't think their adventure in parenthood could include another little one.
I was starting to think, well, if we just have one, then we just have one. It's okay.
After 3 miscarriages, Lauren says this baby is a miracle in a time many are looking for one.
The Roosters are going to have their baby here at St. Luke's East no matter what. But because of visitor restrictions, Reagan won't be able to see her little sister until she makes it home. Some mothers aren't even leaving their homes to bring new life into the world.
10 months ago, we never thought we'd be having a kid in a pandemic. Like, I didn't even really understand what that was. That happens in movies. That's not real life.
With only 2 weeks left to go, Samantha King made a dramatic decision to change her birth plan.
Every day it was like, oh, you can't have a visitor, you can't have your doula, you can't have this. What if you can't have your husband? Like, I can't have my kids visit when the baby's born. Like, it was just every day was a new drawback.
It's one of the most, I think, important and sacred times in a person's life when they have a baby, and to have a limitation placed on who can be there. While I get it, it's 100% valid, I do.
Darcy Mendenhall is a certified professional midwife. In a matter of a few weeks, she guided Samantha through her decision to switch to a home birth.
If there was something good that had to come out of this pandemic going on, it was that it convinced my husband for this home birth that I secretly wanted all along.
Mendenhall doesn't typically take on clients this late into their pregnancy. She says hospital restrictions have more people seeking other options.
For the families that are doing it out of a knee-jerk, fearful, anxious place, we really talk about that to make sure that this is a good option, because once you want to have a home birth, you have to be really committed to it.
Mendenhall gets more than 3 inquiries about at-home births every week.
It's not a fly-by-night decision. It's one that you really have to feel good about, really sit with.
Samantha was already a mother of 2 with experience in natural births. She says her latest pregnancy has the added conflict of coronavirus.
It's going to make one heck of a story in the baby book.
Every baby born this year will have a story to tell.
There's still a baby at the end of the day, and to feel really strong and, again, empowered in your choice, that changes lives. It really does.
All mothers will be writing about this season of love with special deliveries inside the hospitals.
What's her name? Lillian.
And at home. In Kansas City, Abby Dodge, KC, TV5 News.